Hola, mujer.
Hola, mujer.
You sound much better today, I guess. COVID is dead, 100%.
It was 2 weeks ago, mujer. You've been editing this episode for 2 weeks and now you're still living in the imaginary timeline in which I'm still sick. Dude, it's been Christmas since, it's been New Year's. We recorded even the podcast since it's 9th freaking January, man.
My bad. That's exactly why, because I just got done editing it yesterday and I was still listening to your COVID stories. So it was feeling fresh in my mind.
Yeah, I see. By the way, my COVID voice, oh my god. Isn't it like the best version of Adriana's voice you've ever heard?
I think your vocal cords were basically responding to the challenge that COVID proposed, and Mujer likes a challenge.
I think my voice was just less squeaky and a bit lower, and it did the magic.
Well, you got COVID once, I guess, or thrice actually, so you know where to get it from. So go get some for our next episode.
Yeah, inshallah. How are you, Mujer?
I'm good. 2024 has been interesting so far. Most of the little goals have been met, except for the swimming one. It's been 9 days and I have swum 0 times so far. But I have an excuse.
All right.
I actually went to the swimming pool, but it was closed. I went on Sunday. Yeah, like I had every intention, and I took my bike and my pair of shorts. I was there, but they were closed. And then I went to another one and they were also closed. And then I was thinking, okay, you are starving, go get some food, or keep hunting for a swimming pool because you want to check that little goal. And I was like, let's just go get some food. So I will try to go Saturday this time. Maybe they're closed on Sunday, but I believe last time I went, it was a Sunday, so I'm a little bit confused. I'm not really sure. Maybe I just have to check the schedule in advance or something. But apart from that, everything has been good. How about you? What's up?
Wow, I mean, I'm really proud that you even made the effort to actually go to the swimming pool. Usually for me, this is the most difficult part. So congrats, Mujer, even looking for another one. Wow, that's commitment right there. So it's really good. Yeah, I'm recording from a bit of a low point. Generally like just exhausted and not my best energy. But screw that, you know? Podcasters have those days too. Yeah. And the show must go on.
That's my favorite song. Not really my favorite song, but I do use this line a lot. I think I've influenced you a little bit with the show must go on.
I always think about you when listening to this song. Anyway, we started already at the beginning, but I wanted to make the intro. It's like, let's review the last episode bit. So, how was the last episode for you? You, the brave editor of our second Mundi Bitches and COVID episode. What are your thoughts?
It was actually fun editing the second episode. So it's a little bit funny. We're talking about the second one while recording the fourth one. I'm not sure anybody's catching up right now.
Yes. That's fine.
So it was fun listening to this conversation again after it had been kind of forgotten. And I was like, oh, like I knew what we talked about, but I really forgot the details. So like listening to everything that we talked about over and over again, because you keep going back to make sure you got that little edit right. I've been basically just cutting and erasing a lot of little parts of the clips. And the work itself that I'm doing, I'm using, a video editor because I was too lazy to watch a YouTube tutorial on how to use an audio editor. So I think I've been doing it in a very linear way, and there's no going back. It's really, really difficult to go back and fix anything. It's really difficult because of the way I did it. It's like, you have to keep going forward. So yeah, that's a lesson learned for our next time. But yeah, it was also a little bit addictive somehow. I really like the routine of moving, cutting, going back and forth. You would end up spending a lot of time, and time will pass really, really fast. You wouldn't notice it. However, like you said, it took me 2 weeks or even more. I'm not really sure. It took me a really long time. Because it takes a long time, and I'm really good at procrastination as well. So these two things have been working harmoniously as usual. So taking a long time and procrastinating. But I got it done finally. So episode 2, that I edited. Everything else, yo mujer so far.
No, great job, really. I also like editing, and I think it takes so much time. But there is something very addictive, as you said, about it. I don't really understand what it is, but it reminds me a bit of my jigsaw puzzles, you know? I just start, and I'm like, okay, just one more. When it comes to the material, the content of the actual episode, did you notice that I bravely announced that I have COVID, sore throat, and you should talk more? After which I proceeded to talk so long and over anything that you say and interrupting you and just like blabbing all the way.
That was beautiful. You know, I would cut the parts where I don't talk and the parts where you don't talk. And then I was contrasting them. How much blue in your track? How much blue in my track? Mm-hmm. And I was like, we have achieved the perfect balance. There was a little bit more blue in your track, which I really liked.
And also I noticed I presented the book Moody Bitches in the episode, and I keep like criticizing it and shitting over it, while I think I forgot to mention I actually liked the book. It might be not that obvious.
You did mention at the very beginning that you really liked it, but then while discussing it together, yeah, I think we both were a little bit critical of it. I mean, I was clear where I stand from the very beginning. You said it changed your life, basically.
I think you were supposed to prepare a book review for us today.
I have not prepared a book review, but I know the last book that I finished reading, and I can talk about it.
That's what I meant.
Without preparation, you know, like I like to improvise because that's what I do. And surprisingly speaking, that's the title of the book. It's what I do.
Oh, wow. Look at this. Such a smooth transition. I know, right? I cannot believe it was not planned.
I did not see it coming. Actually, it really happened. I was like, oh, wait, that's the title of the book. Like, I realized this after I said it, and then I was quick enough to add that. Okay, so yeah, it's the title of the book. The book is called It's What I Do, for a photojournalist called Lindsay Addario, I presume. She's American, but I have no idea where that last name comes from. I had borrowed this book from a friend, and my friend said that that's one of her favorite books ever, that she found really inspiring. And I was like, okay, I would like to read that. I enjoyed it. I would recommend it. Did I find it inspiring for me personally? Not really. Maybe a little bit in a way. I do really respect determination, and I really like a personal story, life journey. And right now, I dare say I did not find it to be the most inspiring book, but I did enjoy it. So it's about photojournalists who liked to work in conflict zones, war zones, or places with uprisings, famine sometimes, civil war other times. Yeah, I guess, frankly speaking, my first impression of the book was, oh my God, it's so American. Like, I don't know what she sounds like, but I could hear a very nice American accent while reading the book. Somehow the attitude and the presentation. So you can imagine some stereotypes or whatever, but it was still fun. Sometimes it would be getting into a part that I found so interesting, and then that was it, end of the story. And I was like, what happens next? I want to know. Like, you just don't just jump from like Kabul to Istanbul. What happened in the middle? Like, you were just having a fling with somebody. How did it end? Like, what happened? I want to know. You know how much I like story, you know? So the book is putting some emphasis on relationships because now she's married, she has a baby. She was talking a lot about relationships and how this kind of career affected her relationship and the relationships of the people who are in the same industry. And she talked a lot about how that could be affecting, you know, their beloved ones or family. So the book goes from when she started, how she got her first camera, how she tried so hard to be working as a freelancer for some of these famous magazines and newspapers, getting the first gig, and then after years getting regular work, and then being put on the priority list, having her work recognized, what these stories started to mean to her. So at some point she was talking about, people seeking this profession because they're basically adrenaline junkies. So they like to work in a place like a war zone because of the thrill. Life far from it is just so mundane and boring. She also talked about how much damage this kind of work can actually bring onto your soul. About people committing suicide, getting addicted to drugs, or some of them just quitting it all and leaving it behind and starting something very different. She, for herself, she claims that it was about the truth, showing the truth to the world through the images or the videos, mostly the images that she took, pictures that she snapped, and about how much that means because it could affect public opinions, politicians, and the kind of decisions they'll be making, governments, and how they approach or tackle different problems. So that was her vision, and I respect that. But I'll be honest with you, my most favorite parts of the book are these parts where she was facing the biggest hardships. She was almost kidnapped in Iraq once, or detained for a whole day with her colleagues, and they got out of it safe. So that was just like watching, an action film or something. It was very thrilling. I liked that a lot. There was another time where she actually just got into a car accident in Pakistan. Her driver died. So she was also talking about that and the guilt that she felt she had to carry, for example. Another time she was kidnapped in Libya, covering the uprisings there, the civil war in 2011, the Arab Spring, when it was happening back in the day. Gaddafi was still in power back then, his forces, the rebels, blah, blah, blah. And she was held captive with her colleagues for like a week or so. So how she also wrote about this part, that was very interesting. She joined some troops in Afghanistan trying to cover near the front lines of what was happening, and she took some pictures of some of the soldiers, after getting shot, one of them dead, body bags, all of that. And she was talking a lot about her feelings. One of her colleagues that was actually pregnant, and a reporter that was still with her for months, and like what it meant to them and so on. And I was like,
oh wow,
that's like a level of perseverance that's definitely inspiring. You have to give it to them, to respect for sure. So yeah, would I recommend it? Yes. Did I enjoy it? Yes. Did I learn anything from it? I can't say yes. But I like autobiographies. It's always nice listening to someone's story, and it's just perfect when they write it, not talk about it. Yeah. Questions?
I'm not sure of questions, but I always think about those people who are journalists in one way or another in zones of conflicts. That indeed, as you mentioned, they seem different kinds of people. And of course, they always prioritize the conflict and the meaning it brings to the humanity and how their job really, really matters. But I think their personal relationships is actually what I really like to hear about and read about. So when you mention it, it's actually something that I find very interesting because it's a bit the same about like hardcore extreme sportsmen. Like I'm always wondering, okay, who loves those people? Who is waiting? How do you learn to not bear responsibility for other people worry of you? How do you connect such a extreme life with any balance in relationship? I struggle with imbalance in my life now when I'm doing nothing hardcore. I'm just living in a different country than the original one, and still I feel like some important core of me is not fed enough, struggles to connect on a very human level. So I really wonder if those people are not, like, I don't know, big artists, someone who just jumps head on to a topic that they find very important and forgets about themselves, kind of. They give their life in a way, no? For the material.
Yeah, some of them do give their lives to it. Actually, today I was reading a book about the history of Vietnam, and the writer mentioned that there were 135 journalists and photojournalists who died or got killed in the years of the war from both sides in Vietnam, the Vietnam War. So it's 135 journalists or photojournalists. That's a lot of people. It's insane, actually.
Yeah. It's a lot of people who put so much effort and left so much also. It's interesting because, like, the topic of who takes part in a war and why, it's a different topic. Some people have to, some people are driven by one way or another. But the journalist, it's his job, in a way. Job or a call or the whole life. I don't know. It's strange. It's really strange that one calls it a profession, I guess, at some point. Do you remember the book that I was reading at some point called The Age of Jihad?
I remember the title, but I don't remember the content of the book or what it was about.
The book is written by Patrick Cockburn, and the subtitle is Islamic State and the Great War for the Middle East. So he traveled around some conflicts in the Middle East and was always there to report. And I don't know, a lot of war journalists look up to what he did, trying to understand the conflicts, trying to give the objective perspective, let's say. But I couldn't go through the book. I just went through 1/3, and it fills me with pain and conflict, and I understand I'm living the war of the past, and I feel so sorry that I cannot finish this book. On one hand, I wish it was more interesting to me, because I think someone spent a life digging this topic, and people took lives in the stories that I'm reading, but I cannot bring myself to read it, so that was tough.
Too much pain for the mohair.
I mean, yeah. A few years ago, when I was studying, I felt like it's a very big topic in my life and very important. I was reading about refugees, listening to podcasts, trying to help. I took part in workshops. I wanted to volunteer. It was one of the biggest motivators for which I started learning Arabic. I wanted to go to refugee camps and really, be helpful. And then it overwhelmed me. And from basically day to day, I was like, okay, enough. I cannot save the world, and if I cannot save the world, it will just destroy me. This amount of trying to understand, I'm too weak. I guess.
But you actually said that you were curious about how or what kind of personal life, or when it comes to relationships, how would these people who work in war zones, how would journalists do? And well, many of her mates, had families. Many one reporter that we worked with was pregnant.
Yeah, that's crazy.
She eventually actually gave birth to a baby. Lindsay herself was married and pregnant at some point, and she was in Somalia covering famine stories while being pregnant. So she also was talking about this. That's basically a big part of the book about how it affects the relationships that she had. And she was talking a lot about flings, that some people would be married and really far, working for months away from home. And a lot of them would end up in flings and cheating. And that's usually how the relationship of a journalist goes, really. Usually breakups are so frequent, nothing lasts. And she got married, but she said that she never thought she would. She's married to someone who's kind of in the same field. Was the manager of some Reuters office, who also has to travel a lot and was, based in India at some point, in Istanbul at another point. And I don't know if he was working in the field before or not. But yeah, someone who's closer to her field would actually have some level of understanding compared to the average citizen who does not exactly work in conflict zones, which is everybody, She had boyfriends, and then they would cheat. She would have flings sometimes. They always break up. She was very reluctant and hesitant when it comes to having a child. And I think under the pressure maybe of her partner, she finally gave in, and it finally happened, even though that was not really a thing on her list of priorities. But yeah, so far she managed, and they seem to be living happily ever after, and she was still working. But there were moments in the book that actually kind of brought tears to my eyes.
Oh, really?
And that was not her being beaten up or anything like that, no. It was not being kidnapped, no. It was the time she was actually calling her family after being kidnapped for a week, for example, or after getting into the act. Because I could imagine myself in her father's shoes, or sisters, or mothers, or husband. I'm now that must have been hell, If you're watching on a news about your partner or daughter missing for a week now, and then she's calling you, that's some real emotional shit here. Or being into an accident and then waking up in a hospital somewhere and then making that phone call to tell people that you are in an accident and that you are in a hospital. So that's also like, it's tough. I imagine that's to be a really, really tough
And they
thing.
cannot do anything about it, and they're so far.
Exactly. You'd be so helpless, cannot do anything, and you can only wait. And waiting, if they say she's dead and it's confirmed, you know how to deal with it. If she's out alive, you know how to deal with it. When you don't know, it's the worst. Like, there's no closure,
Yes.
and I think that would just drive people to madness and extreme pain. It's not so cool, but yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do. So I understand, but I don't like it, but I understand. It's that thing, dilemma.
Yeah. And nowadays we have like GPS or internet. I mean, of course, in war zones it's difficult still. But imagine like in the 80s, like it wasn't so easy to like have a call, or something like even. I mean, yeah, they were phones, but
Yeah.
just living in this unknown, like basically you say goodbye and good luck. Why you're smiling?
I remember I was 10 or 9, and my dad was not in the country at the time, and we would wait was it Thursday or Friday at 5 a.m. for the one phone call every week. So that's not in the 80s, that's 2000, We did not have internet, no computers, no nothing. It was just one phone call when you could use a landline. I know Nokia phones were starting to be around back then, but they were not even so popular. So 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. was such an odd hour, so it was cheaper to call then. That's why the time was chosen and the date every week. You'd wake up and wait for it. It was okay. And letters were being exchanged. I had written and I had received some of them. My God, I sound like a boomer now. But yes, I also know how to use email and, MSN.
Well, it is a bit of a boomer, but no, actually, it's very important, I think. And I always failed history in school. I had problem with that. And once we had, whoever brought some memorabilia from war to school to show to other kids and to the teacher for the school archive could get the markup. So I asked my mom, and it occurred that she had letters from her uncle who was sent to Siberia as a punishment, like it happened in Poland at some point. Crazy. Like, the language even was a bit different, because back then, I believe he was taught Russian at some point instead of Polish or something. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I read those letters, but I remember that I felt so weird. War is very real later when you grow up, and as a kid I thought it was like, yeah, it's real, but it's a story, that everyone says.
Yeah, it's like an action film.
And then you read a letter that was in Siberia. You touch a letter that was there. And you read how they don't have water and how they try to build a house and how it's minus gazillion degrees. And you're like, I don't know. It's so surreal to realize it's real.
I've always liked history, and there's something I really like: personal history, country history. It's just stories, and stories are fun.
Sometimes they're not fun at all.
It's okay.
Sometimes they're about the core of evilness on this world and just hell.
Sure. Just don't take it too personally.
Jesus, I'm so negative today. Oh my God. And we talk about war. I'm pretty sure.
Stay detached somehow. Stay indifferent. Just look at it as a story. I mean, atrocities are being committed every day. Now, every day back then. It's just life, Knowing about it maybe can teach us a lesson, how we could be better. I mean, usually we end up being a little bit better, actually. I don't know, but it can go bad also again, and then maybe better again, hopefully. But it's not that bad. Yeah, I mean, when you're reading a lot of details, sure, it can bring a lot of sadness, yes.
I don't know if I wanted to talk about something. Oh yeah, I could talk about my visit in the museum, because I was in the museum yesterday that I didn't like. So I could talk about it and be what I'm doing the best, which is critical. Or I could tell a very random fun fact, let's say, about a dad of my friend. Which one? You pick.
Let's start with a very random fact about a dad.
All right. So a dad of my friend, Fred, travels a lot and loves flying with a plane. This year, he, in order to keep the miles, like platinum cards and everything, he flew 60 times. And sometimes he would make in-country flights just to do the miles.
Wait, he's paying money to collect miles, or he's flying with the miles he already has collected?
I'm not sure, actually. Probably the flight is not that expensive and it's worth to pay a little bit to by the end of the year have the miles. I don't know what even the miles give you. I have no idea. But for me, it's so crazy to think that he would be proud of that because, me and Sergi, we flew so much.
It's something he's passionate about. We respect the passion, Mohair.
But think about the carbon emission, and he so proudly strides into that. And my boyfriend is guilt tripping so much about the amount of flights we took. And believe me, I traveled the most in my life this year. And he probably too. Most of it was by plane. We together probably traveled maybe half of what this guy did.
I am aware that planes do pollute the air. I am aware of that. However, it has actually never crossed my mind while flying or while hearing about people's flights. So far, when it comes to about caring for the environment, refusing to take unnecessary plastic bags has been the only thing I do. That's it. But flying for some people could be seen as an achievement. I can actually imagine that because when he talks about how much he flew and you think of the emissions, that's a first world problem. I don't usually think this way, I'm like, about the environment, I'm like, oh, that's so cool, man. Good for you. You survived all these flights? I mean, what are the chances? The more you fly, the higher the odds something would go wrong. But he survived.
Yeah, I disagree because when you are taking a plane twice a year, I don't know, for a well-deserved vacation, to visit the family or something, it's very different than taking a plane whenever you can, just for, sport. We take a plane in Europe between places that we could easily drive between or take a train. I see why you think it's ludicrous. Asia is so much bigger and it's so much more difficult to... Also, sometimes you don't have a choice. You take a bus because there is no plane or something. It's a different structure. But here, it's a first world problem because it's a first world service. We have planes everywhere. I can take a plane from Madrid to Barcelona and it might be cheaper than the bus or a train or a car or whatever. So it becomes an ethical choice at some point, no? Don't you think?
So now, fun fact. Aviation accounts for around 2.5% of global CO2 emissions. All right. Do you want another fun fact?
Yeah.
The U.S. Army accounts for 5.5% of global emissions. Only the Army of the United States. Don't feel so bad, Mohair. Who uses more fuel? All the airplanes of the world or the Army of one world? According to that quick search on Google. So I'm not really sure how accurate it is. So I'm just saying, don't hate on Fred's dad so much, okay?
So my guilt was in vain?
He's one of the very, 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 very tiny reasons.
Damn it. Well, I'm glad I have you.
How about his passion? Can't you see it? Can't you see the passion for flying? Isn't this something he's so happy flying? It's amazing. The last time I was really happy flying was the first time I was flying. And then I got over it.
Yeah, flying is just a mean of transportation rather than joy recently. Unfortunately.
There was a year, maybe I flew 13 times or something. I was very proud. I was like, I've traveled this year and all these flight tickets are the proof. Because I'm passionate about travel, and that was one way to show that I did it, It was not about really being on a plane. It was about going places, Okay, so that was Fred's dad.
Yeah.
Moving on.
It was pick one out of two kind of offer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait, is it just...
Yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't know the rules of the game. I would have picked more wisely.
I don't have strength for talking about art anymore now. But I will prepare better for next week. I was in this museum in Barcelona. That was a weird experience. And I'll try to explain it to you, why it was weird. And I'll prepare a list of artists for you. I know you appreciate things like this. Modern art, mind you. So
Sure. I appreciate the list, yes. It gives me an idea, sure. The art itself, I also like that. I appreciate that in my own way.
Your best way.
Yeah.
Ra, if you had to pick a different major in school, what would you have picked?
I mean, I've picked so many majors already. What are you talking about? you could ask this question to somebody who's had one major, So I had aerospace engineering at some point. I had computer science at some point. I had education at some point. I had tourism at some point. So one more to go.
Mm-hmm. So would you, for example, flip IT for history or something? Like, that's my question, basically. You don't have to take any more courses. I'm asking about the past mistakes.
Not really. Like, I like this bit of exploring around. Yeah. I would like to do a master's and not sure in what yet. Something I'm thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it'd be history. I like history, but would I actually pursue a degree in it? Not really. I read it for fun. I mean, it's really nice to be reading, and then you can just write a thesis on what you're already reading because you're reading it because you like reading it. That's easy. It's an easy way to go. Like mythology a lot as well. All these stories of gods and demons. Used to read more. Just got busy with life.
I don't know why.
Because it was really fun reading books. It was a life, and you could just forget about everything else and just let yourself be immersed in a book. And at some point, I decided I didn't want the theory. I wanted to live life. I wanted to create my own stories, indulge in shenanigans, and have my own stories that I eventually forget about.
So maybe you should have written
them
down.
I remember the echo of the feeling. Not the story itself anymore. But, it was a good time.
Well, now you have a podcast for all the stories, so maybe
they'll be saved forever. We're putting them now on iTunes and YouTube, so at least one of them will be surviving long enough. And before we stop, we have to say goodbye, mujer. See you next time.
Bye, mujer. Sorry for being so pessimistic. Ciao.
Ma salama.